Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. We're so glad that you tuned in today so that you can hear more about being a good steward with the resources that God has trusted you to manage. Financial Issues is a ministry that educates people about financial issues that they're dealing with from a biblical worldview. We encourage you to find out more about our ministry and consider becoming a partner with us for just $132 a year. You can find that information by going to financialissues.org. Well, let's jump right in today with the stewardship verse of the day. It comes from 1 Corinthians 3:11. For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. You know, this reminds me of an interesting article that I ran across just recently about the data centers in Washington State threatening to break the state's green energy push. So a little bit of background. This article really highlights the problematic decisions that states and municipalities are having to make between green energy and the new AI craze. Back in 2019, Washington adopted legislation requiring electric utilities to go carbon neutral by 2030. Wasn't a problem in Grant County, as Grant County's utility district owned two public dams on the Columbia River that are capable of powering more than 1.5 million homes. So for decades, this sparsely populated county had enough clean hydroelectricity to meet its own power needs and then to sell the excess at low cost across the Northwest. Fast forward until now. The county is looking at energy shortages in the near future. The article said that in the next 6 years, they will either have to violate the state green energy law, limiting the use of fossil fuels, or risk rolling blackouts in homes, factories, and hospitals. Well, you know, the left just can't decide. Is fossil fuel evil? Or is it okay again when we need to power AI? So AI, artificial intelligence, requires extraordinary computing power. It takes a lot of electricity to run those data centers. Experts say that the industry's global energy consumption as of just 2 years ago could double by 2026 in just 2 years. So data centers are not just for AI, but businesses and people need these data centers every day to run their internet searches, to store their photos on the cloud, and to stream videos. So, will the left compromise their obsession with green energy and turn back to fossil fuels to support AI? Yes. That's my opinion, because they are so fickle. They are not grounded in their convictions. They do what is right in their own eyes. They rely on their own understanding to determine what is good and what is evil. They may or may not know it, but, you know, if you follow the money, you'll see where their convictions are going. They have no firm foundation. My opinion, AI could potentially be the equivalent of the modern Tower of Babel. So according to AI, ChatGPT, the purpose of AI is to extend human capabilities, improve efficiency, and enable new possibilities across different fields and industry. It compiles data and quote unquote learns from man's perspective, because it's man's perspective. It's the data that comes from men which can and does contain many flawed ideas that trains this AI. Well, Proverbs 14:12 tells us that man's understanding can be very flawed. It says, there is a way that seems right to a person, but its end is the way to death. Proverbs 9:10 tells us that the fear of Jehovah is the beginning of wisdom. Well, green energy is man's idea on how to save the earth. You see, men have uncovered this great threat of global warming, that the earth is going to be destroyed because of human activities, and they've also come up with a plan to save the earth. The scripture is clear that the earth is passing away, but the earth will one day be saved and renewed by the one who created it, by the one who created it for men, by the way. So we won't compromise our financial priorities because they're built on a firm foundation. We believe that God created it all, that he owns it all, and our proper response in that is to honor God in the way that we invest. So conservatives who mostly embrace godly wisdom and reject worldly wisdom are now being called weird, oddly enough, according to a lot of the rhetoric that is coming out of the left. A lot of the Harris campaign has labeled J.D. Vance and others who have Christian morals as weird. Oddly enough, according to Merriam-Webster, the synonym for weird is queer. The definition of queer is relating to or being a person whose sexual orientation is not heterosexual or whose gender identity is not cisgender. So, really, who is the weird one here? Yet I deviate. But beware. It's also clear from 1 Timothy 6:5 that those who think that godliness is a means to financial gain are of a corrupt mind and are robbed of the truth. So, just to clarify, the intent of biblically responsible investing is not to say that we're following a certain set of rules and that's going to definitely lead to financial gain. It's not about that at all. It's about the intent to honor God by refusing to fund darkness, not investing in companies that would fund the dark agendas of this world, like abortion, pornography, the LGBTQ agenda, and so many of those other things that are deteriorating the moral fabric of our country. So, don't get us wrong. We don't preach a prosperity gospel that is contrary to the foundational truths that we believe. But we preach honoring God in the way that you invest. Well, Grant, I'm not sure how much time we have. I don't have a clock. I can't see the clock, but do we have time to get to some questions?
Yeah, we have time to at least get to one question in particular from Jay.
Okay.
Hey, Shana, what's up with the ETF1? It sure was a shock from yesterday.
All right. I see Robert has a similar question. Do we want to, I guess, kind of lump those together? ETF?
Yeah, Robert also asks, ETF1 is LC and MC stocks. They took a huge hit when the market crashed.
Yeah. So we did have a little bit of a correction. I think the NASDAQ is officially in correction territory. But as of yesterday, the market was on its way to bouncing back. So ETF1 is the closest thing that we have to an index fund, except it's biblically responsible. So an index fund, like if you're trying to mimic the S&P 500, you would invest in an ETF that mimics that exact index. We don't do that because there are a lot of companies in the S&P 500 that are not biblically responsible. So we have a clean version of the S&P 500 ETF, and that's ETF number 1. If you're a partner, you can go to our list and you can see which one we're talking about. So if you compare the two, so it did go down. The market, the S&P 500 from August the 1st through August the 6th, the S&P 500 was down 5.6%. Since this one is similar to the market, but it's a clean version of it, it actually was only down 4.5%. So it was down less than the whole market. From peak to trough, our ETF, or the ETF that we use, was down 6.3% versus the S&P that was down 7.6%. So, you can't always say that it will always be true, but at least in this instant right here, something that is supposed to be fairly similar, except the clean version of it didn't have quite as much volatility as the markets. Well, I hear the music. That means we've got to take a break. I'm going to finish up my thoughts about this when I get back. I'm going to give you a couple of tips to stay grounded in the market volatility that may continue for a little while longer. Find out more about biblically responsible investing and our ministry at financialissues.org.
We are indeed facing into the wind of this cultural holocaust to try to provide loving, compassionate, Christ-centered answers to these women. The greatest thing they need is the ability to make sound judgment decisions in their life, and that comes from the Lord Jesus Christ, a heart change that only He can bring. So we're evangelists to these women on behalf of the Financial Issues audience, and helping them to be able to move forward with wisdom in their lives when they come in, not just to save the life of their baby, but also to save the soul of the mom and the baby eventually as well. It's one thing to talk about it, but it's certainly another thing, and so encouraging to see the pro-life ministry, a financial issue stewardship ministry, take a stand on this thing and do something so effective as we've done.
Yes, sir.
Go to financialissues.org/preborn to learn more about preborn.
How is Timothy Plan continuing to lead the fight as you guys now enter your fourth decade of leading this fight of biblically responsible investing?
We've been too silent for too long, and we can no longer be silent. You stand up, like Ronald Reagan said, we're only one generation away from losing all of our liberty. Yeah. It has to be fought for. I wish it didn't. And you can fight for it. You don't need guns and ammunition and that. You can fight for it, especially with your dollars, because it's always about the money. And when the money starts impacting people, they start paying attention. When we launched this, they said it couldn't be done, but here we are 30 years later. They said you couldn't get competitive returns, but here we are.
What a tremendous testament of God's grace.
Go to financialissues.org/Timothy Plan to learn more about Timothy Plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, where we help you view your financial issues through a biblical lens, keeping things in perspective. So we were talking about the recent volatility in the markets. So we saw the market drop. The NASDAQ actually did drop into correction territory for a short time between August 1st and the 5th, but it has appeared to come out of correction territory at this point. So, we're talking about, we got a question that we were answering in the last segment about one of the ETFs that we use and how much it had dropped. It was down 4 or 5% in a short period of time. And I don't know, I guess the question was, some people were surprised to see that happen. I'm not surprised to see it happen. We have pullbacks in the market. It's a 5% pullback is very, very common, happens usually more than once a year. A 10% correction tends to happen on average about every 12 to 18 months. So, that wouldn't be surprising either. It's yet to be determined whether this is going to be something that's just temporary, a little hiccup in the road, or something that we need to take more seriously. So, we have adjusted our buy list accordingly. Partners would have gotten an alert out on Monday. So if you didn't get that in your inbox, you may want to check your junk folder if you are a partner, or just log into the website and then go. There's a partner tab for alerts, and you can read the most recent alerts. So in light of all the market volatility, I just want to give you a couple of things to keep in mind, things to help you stay grounded and keep things in perspective. So, the S&P 500, which we call the market, that's one of the indices that we track, has increased more than 10% since the start of 2024. That is even including the most recent drop of over 7% and then the subsequent recovery. So this is the kind of annual gain that most investors are glad to see. If the year ended today and you had a 10% return, I would think that most investors would consider that a good return. So really and truly, the losses that are, and I hate even calling them losses, because it's not a loss until you actually sell something and lock in your price. So it was really a fluctuation in value. So a fluctuation in value to the downside, a decline in value that happened through this past Monday really just set the market back to where it was in May. So to put that in perspective, if you were happy in May, shouldn't you be happy today with the same comparable return? And really, instead of looking at how much your investments decline in a very, very short period, you should really be looking at whether or not that decline has a significant impact on your financial future. So if your financial future starts in less than 2 years, you may need to rethink the risk that's in your portfolio if the volatility that you just experienced was a little too much for you. That may be a good reason to readjust. But, try to avoid timing the market at all cost. And if you've been a partner for any length of time, and, we love to hear from you when the show is live. We love for partners to call in and share their experience using the financial issues strategy. But there's a video on our website for partners where our founder and previous host of the show talked about putting in bottoms. And so, I'm a financial advisor in private practice, and I eat my own cooking. So whatever we're putting out to the partners is what we're doing in the strategy there. And so, as I'm managing portfolios that are, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years or more old, it's rare that I come across positions that are actually down in value below where they were when we got in. So the longer you go, the harder or the more unlikely that it becomes that you'll really test that cost basis or that you'll go below your cost basis. So that's a great value in being a long-term investor. I think that also has a certain psychological effect to it too. If you log into your brokerage account and you see a lot of red on the screen, if you're a trader, you probably haven't owned those positions for very long. Seeing a lot of red, I think, does a lot of damage psychologically to somebody's fear factor as to whether or not they're optimistic or not. The longer you go, the more likely it is that you'll see a lot of green. That can have a very positive psychological effect for long-term investors. And we think it's really the best kind of strategy to have. So, Grant, what do we have there? I know we've got some questions that have come in. What do we have on tap?
Yeah, so we have a question from Tanya. Good morning, Shana. Just transferred in kind my Royal Over IRA account into my Fidelity account, but want to now transfer that into my Roth account that I just opened. Did I hear correctly that I can position the money in my Roth just as I do with the money outside of the Roth? Meaning, can I use the money inside the Roth to buy stock from the buy list, just like I do with the stock I have in the regular investment portfolio?
Yes, you did hear that right. So if you have a self-directed account, when you open accounts on a brokerage platform, you can have basically 3 different kind of accounts. You can have a traditional IRA, you can have a Roth IRA, or you can have just a regular brokerage or investment account. You'll sometimes hear it called, or a non-qualified account, an account that doesn't have any special tax treatment. So an IRA and a Roth account both have special tax treatment. The brokerage or investment account or non-qualified account you can experience tax consequences from making money, which is not a terrible thing, in that account. So if you earn dividends, if you earn interest, if you sell a position for more than what you paid for it, you can have capital gains. All of those things are taxable in a way. So yes, as long as it's a self-directed account, you can buy stocks in your Roth just like you can in your IRA and in a non-qualified brokerage account. The things that I would be mindful of is that when you roll over your IRA account, if it is a regular IRA account, all of that is pre-tax money. It's never had taxes paid on it. If you're going to make a transfer from a traditional IRA into a Roth account, that's called a Roth conversion. You're going to want to make sure that you understand that there's a 5-year rule that you have to have it open for 5 years in order for those conversions to get that special tax treatment, which in a Roth is the money comes out tax-free. In addition to that, what I would say, because there's different tax treatments for those different accounts, the Roth account is where I would hold my most aggressive parts of my portfolio, because in a Roth account, you're going to get that tax-free growth. Whereas in IRA, whatever you're growing for yourself, you're also growing for the government. You have an inherent, an embedded tax liability in that type of account. So, that's a great question that Tanya had, and it brings me kind of to a teachable moment with the differences between the Roth and the traditional IRA. So I kind of articulated some of those, but let's just start basically with what is an IRA. IRA, or some people call it an IRA, it stands for Individual Retirement Account. And IRAs, or the traditional IRAs, were created, I believe it was back in the 70s when Congress passed a rule bringing them into existence. And the purpose of them was to offer individuals a tax-advantaged way to save. So the money that goes into an IRA, as long as you meet certain qualifications, you have to have earned income to be able to contribute, whether it's a traditional or a Roth account. You have to have that earned income, then you're eligible to contribute. The money that goes into a traditional IRA, as long as you don't have an employer-sponsored plan at work, you may be able to deduct the amount that you put into the IRA, which means that you don't pay taxes. You also get tax deferral, which I also like to refer to it more commonly as tax postponement. That's what makes more sense to me, because a lot of times people think whenever they get tax deferral that they're kind of getting out of paying their taxes. Well, you are in this tax year, but you're not in the future. You're growing that money. The money that you put in's never had taxes paid. The growth that you get on it won't have taxes paid until the time whenever you start to take that money out. I think taxes are going to be higher in the future than what they are today. So you want to be mindful of your tax bracket today versus what it could be in the future. The main difference between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA, again, is with that tax treatment. With a traditional IRA, you're postponing taxes till some point in the future. With a Roth IRA, you don't get a deduction on what you put in. In fact, if you convert from a traditional to a Roth, you're going to have to pay the taxes on that conversion right away. But a Roth account, you get tax-free growth versus tax-deferred growth. That can be a huge benefit, especially if what I think is going to happen does happen, and that's that taxes are higher in the future than what they are today. So with a Roth, you have certain income limits. Whether you're single or married filing jointly, if you're single and you make more than $153,000, if you're married filing jointly, if you make more than $228,000 in 2024, then you're not eligible to make a Roth contribution. Now, you can still do conversions if you fall within those income limits, but you can't add new money in. For both a traditional and a Roth account for 2024, you can contribute up to $7,000 if you're under 50 years old. If you're 50 or older, you can contribute $8,000. And then there are some deductibility rules for the traditional IRA that involve income limits if you're subject to a plan at work too. So speaking of Roth conversions and speaking of the recent market drop, now might be a really good time to consider a Roth conversion if that's in your if that's conducive to your set of circumstances. Because if you move securities that are down in value, you pay the taxes on the value when you move it. So if it's down in value, you can move it, pay the taxes on the lower amount, and then it recovers and has a chance for tax-free growth in that Roth IRA. Well, folks, if you are listening on an outlet that only carries a short version of the show, we encourage you to go to financialissues.org to learn more about the ministry and to get our phone app so that you can get the full version of the show. We also stream live on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, and you can find us on Truth Social and Instagram and Twitter as well. For the rest of you, stay tuned. We're going to come back with more. Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
Every time I turn on the news, I get so frustrated. When I read a headline, it's obvious they're just trying to manipulate me for clicks and views. I just want to stay informed about what's going on without all the drama and opinions. I knew I needed to find an alternative, and thankfully I found FISM News. They keep the viewers up to date with all the latest news without the extra noise. Check them out by going to fismnews.tv. That's fismnews.tv.
When it comes to money, I always have so many questions. I never know where to go to get answers to those questions. They never really teach you this stuff in school, like some of the best ways to handle it, how to save, when to invest, where to invest, even just what to do with the money. And if I put it in the stock market, what's the best way to protect from losing it all? That fear can be paralyzing. You don't really know what decisions to make. As a Christian, I don't want to give my money to people who are going to use it for things that God hates. When I discovered Financial Issues, it was like a burden was lifted off my shoulders. Not only did I gain access to a simple investment strategy that I can manage myself, I also have the peace of mind that my money will not be going to companies that actively promote things that God hates. Financial Issues has allowed me to experience peace in my investments.
Invest your money in a God-honoring way. Go to financialissues.org.
As a member of Samaritan Ministries, your monthly share is a gift that goes directly to a real person in need. While that share takes care of the financial portion of a need, medical needs are complex and include the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects as well. While the financial gift is important, if we stop there, we miss an opportunity to minister to the whole need of our brother or sister. When you faithfully pray and send a note of encouragement and scripture along with your share, those words become a vessel of God's continued healing and blessing on the receiver. And the impact it has is immeasurable, bringing glory to God and provision and unity to His church. Glorify God with your health care. Send a note this month.
Thanks for listening to this Best of Financial Issues.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. We're so glad that you've stuck around to hear more about the financial issues that we help you with, that we put stewardship as one of the main priorities of this ministry, and estate planning is a topic that is very crucial to stewardship. We think of estate planning sort of as our final act of stewardship because, once we stop breathing, we don't have any control over the assets that we were managing. So we have to be a little bit forward looking and think about and pray about and ask the Lord what he wants us to do with his stuff when we don't need it anymore. So we often discuss, and Jason and I have been discussing the things that people need to consider with estate planning. And to continue the conversation, I've invited my friend Jason MacDowell back to visit with us today about how we approach estate planning in practice. So, Jason, thanks for being here today. Welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Well, all right, let's kind of go through some of the checklist items. There's wills, there's trust. We talked a little bit about that last week. There's powers of attorney, there's medical directives. And, to be clear, neither Jason nor I or legal professionals, we don't have any legal licenses. We're not trying to give you legal advice, but we're just trying to lead you and guide you into obtaining some services that you really need to do proper planning. So before you even go to meet with a legal professional, you need to have a really good idea of what you want to happen and what you want to accomplish there. So some of the things that you need to consider, and Jason and I go through and ask our clients this every annual meeting, do you have a will? Do you have a trust? If so, what do they say? Can you tell me in your own words what you want to see happen? Because that's the most important thing, is that you're able to convey what you want to happen. And then it's the legal professional's job to make sure that what you want to happen will happen by preparing the appropriate legal documents. So there's powers of attorneys, medical directives. Those are all a whole lot of things that you need to think about. But let's kind of go through one by one. So one of the things that you can, the first steps is either do I do a will or a trust? We've kind of already talked about the pros and cons of that. But when you do a will or a trust, one of the reasons that you want to do that is maybe you want to set up some restrictions on the timing and the use of the funds that you pass on, especially if you have a blended family. Maybe you husband and wife each have separate children, and that becomes a little bit more of a complex issue. So wills can allow you to set up restrictions on the timing and use of money. So can trust. So the way that wills do this is with what's called a testamentary trust. So Jason, first let's talk about this. What is a testamentary trust?
Yeah, a testamentary trust is just a trust that is established in accordance with the instructions contained within the will. It's simple as that. Of course, it happens at death of the individual, and then the will dictates that a trust is created and has specific language in it. The trust can name minors with language specifying distributions at certain age. So the family dynamics situation that we talked about in past and even now can be beneficial there.
That's a really good point that you bring up there, because, a lot of people don't realize that, minors can't directly inherit money. So what happens if you didn't make some provision for who controls the money? And you think it's just, it's going to go to my kids. That's what everybody says, right? It's going to go to my kids. So what happens if you fail to plan in that way?
As it states, if you have the will and the testamentary trust, it's just going to be divided based off the language that's in there. So most likely what we see commonly in that situation, if you don't have any specific changes, then it will probably just be split evenly. And then, of course, it'll be all at the same time. So there might be a situation in the family dynamics that you want to wait on certain ones, whether it's adult children. It can be a blend of all kinds of different situations with children, whether adult children or minor children as well.
Yeah, good. And what about maybe a disadvantage of a testamentary trust versus maybe like a regular trust?
I'm glad we're going over this, because this is a good point. The disadvantage of the testamentary trust, though, is that it does not avoid probate, and it makes sense. You know why? Because the will dictates to probate court what to do. So that legal document says, hey, make a trust, but it still is subject to probate court. So where we talked about the living trust that's created while you're living, it's revocable, it can be changed. That's made before the individual, has passed. That's a benefit there. Whereas with this situation specifically, it will be subject to probate court too. So it's a very it's a disadvantage.
Good point. So there's some cost to doing all of this. Whether you do it ahead of time, it's probably cheaper to get a will than it is to get a trust. But then the probate, to probate a will, it actually costs money. So you're going to run into some costs at some point. But you just want to make sure that you have exercise the input that you feel is important. So, death is one thing. That's what really triggers the wheels to go into motion on probating a will or processing a trust. But what about incapacitation? What if you get into a car accident and you're in a coma? What if you have an illness that leaves you incapacitated? What if you have cognitive decline? I don't know that we know anybody that has that, but let's just say that you're a very important person and making decisions and you start to sort of lose it. What happens at that point? What can you do to plan for that?
Yeah, so there's a legal document called powers of attorney. So when talking about a simple will package, when you go to your legal advisor or your attorney that's going to put things together, you ask about a will, a power of attorney, and then medical directive. I'll touch on that last piece very last, but what we're going to talk about is powers of attorney. It's a legal document through which, as a principal, names someone to have the authority to make decisions and take actions on your behalf. It's only valid while you're alive. So say your spouse is your power of attorney. Well, it's only going to work while you're still alive. But incapacitation is where they can make decisions for you where you cannot. So you don't have to be an attorney to be the power of attorney over your spouse. That's another point we have to make as well. It can be an individual.
That's a good point, because we talk about this, and as many years as I've been in practice, we've had experience with these things coming up and actually happening. So let's just say that you have a husband and wife, and let's say the majority of the assets are in the husband's IRA account. Well, an IRA account by law can only have one owner. That's the husband. So what happens if there's an accident or the husband's in a coma or something like that, and the wife needs to make a distribution, to pay bills or to, provide some care for the husband. And she calls us and she says, hey, my husband's in the hospital and this is what we need. Well, as much as we would want to help, we would have to say, well, we have to have his signature. And if he's not able or in the state of mind to give a signature, then we have to have some other kind of documentation that authorizes. That's the last thing you want to have to tell somebody when they're in that kind of situation. So one of the things that you can do to plan for that is to have a power of attorney, because there's, the financial power of attorney, what are some of the things, just to kind of get people thinking, what are some of the kind of things that you need that for?
Yeah, so some of the key uses with power of attorney, and I want to make note of the durable versus regular. Durable extends the power of attorney once an individual becomes incapacitation. So that's where we would see most commonly. There's a regular version where it stops at incapacitation. I would say that's more of a disadvantage. So the durable makes more sense, and we see more commonly in the practice, of course. But one of the key uses is the financial power of attorney, which is part of that legal document that the power of attorney grants to the person that is chosen. And now in the situation, in the practice, what we have is we have the power of attorney documents, and it is the spouse in your example. Then the wife or the spouse that's not incapacitated can come to us with those documents, and we can have it processed so that there is proper permission on that IRA for a distribution that we can take. Otherwise, our hands are tied. Even though we know the spouse, we know the family situation, personally, legally, we as licensed advisors won't be able to do anything unless we have that power of attorney legal document and then process correctly. So that's why it's very important to have set up ahead of time when you're working with pretty much anybody in the financial field.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we just got about a minute left, but before we have to go, talk about, we spend a lot of time talking to real people, regular people in these situations about their real life situations. So what are the most common things that we see whenever we're talking about powers of attorney, medical directives, so on and so forth?
Yeah, with medical directive, that's the third part of it. It's where you're incapacitated and there's sort of a best wish for the medical decisions while in the hospital. But as far as what we see in the practice more commonly is power of attorney being spouses on each other and then having a contingent, maybe a child on the end. The medical directive can mimic the POA, so you make the same person your medical directive as your power of attorney as well. And then
Yeah, that's awesome. I know you had another thought to share, but you know what? Maybe we can pick up on some of this next week. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in today and joining us. We hope that we've given you some things to think about, because remember, estate planning is your final act of stewardship. And so we should take this just as seriously as we do all of our other stewardship decisions. Well, we hope that you're going to hang around, because we've got a little bit more to bring to you today on financial issues. You can find out more about the Ministry of Financial Issues at financialissues.org. Are you a Christian seeking to align your investments with your faith? I'm Shana Burt, host of the program Financial Issues. During our program, we share valuable information about the financial issues of the day, including how markets and the economy are moving and how public companies are behaving, helping you to make wise decisions with your investments and the money that the Lord has blessed you with. Using biblical standards, we provide you with valuable financial insight based upon Scripture, making it easy for you to invest in a way that aligns with your values. I can assume that most of you have investments in a 401k or IRA, but what I am sure of is most of you have no clue that the companies in your mutual funds may be funding the LGBTQ agenda, pornography, abortion, the list goes on and on. By listening to Financial Issues, you will learn how to get rid of those investments that are dishonoring God.
Become a partner today by simply going to financialissues.org/join. Click the green button to become a partner today.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Thanks for tuning in today. You're listening to a Best of Financial Issues.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Been a lively show here, Shana. It's been a fun one. Of course, a lot to talk about here from this crazy political cycle, as well as the questions we've been getting. These have been good. A headline that came across my eyes, Shana, I'd love to get your thoughts on it. This is a guide to Kamala Harris's views on abortion, the economy, and more. So as a senator, Harris co-sponsored legislation that would ban states from imposing any restrictions on abortion rights and voted against a bill that would ban abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy. So I've heard from some people, family members, friends, different people, when I say things like, yeah, this group of people, including Kamala Harris, wants to be able to kill babies up until the moment they're born, and they say, no, that's not true. Well, apparently it is true. Even during the 2019 presidential campaign that we referenced, Harris shared a proposal that would force states to get permission from the DOJ before making laws concerning abortion access. She was outraged over the overturn of Roe v. Wade from several years ago. And then last year, she launched a nationwide reproductive health rights tour promoting abortion, and also became the first U.S. vice president to visit a Planned Parenthood clinic at a stop in Minnesota. Harris is expected to be far more aggressive in her support for abortion than Biden if she clinches her party's nomination. Shanna, I think it's a no-brainer here. We need to use our vote for good.
Well, what a claim to fame to be the first vice president to ever visit a Planned Parenthood center. So proud. No, I think you're right. She has been a very outspoken advocate for abortion, and we can expect nothing different than if she becomes president. But really, she wants Congress a branch of government established by our Constitution to get permission from the DOJ. Let's see, who appoints the people in the DOJ? Aren't those unelected bureaucrats appointed by the current administration? She wants Congress to get permission from basically the executive branch to pass laws. I mean, has she read our Constitution?
Probably not.
Probably not. But, you know, that's what progressives really are all about. Progressives see the past as being flawed and that we need to progress into the future. So that means, you know, maybe that old outdated Constitution or that old antiquated biblical text is just, you know, not up to par for today's issues. And we need to progress to something different. And, you know, that's a shame. Now, I'm equally disappointed. Well, maybe not equally, but I am disappointed in the Republican Party's decision to water down the Republican platform when it comes to abortion language as well. So, you know, I was getting very hopeful that our country was doing an about face and turning in a different direction. You know, now I'm not so sure. So I'm really glad. Can't really do anything about, you know, who gets elected except for a vote, but I only get one vote if I'm, you know, doing it the right way. I only get one vote, and what's going to happen in this country is going to happen. I mean, I don't think any God-loving Christian American really and truly wanted America to be able to have a decision to kill babies in the womb. And that's why I'm glad that organizations like Preborn exist. So yes, we need to vote. We need to be a good steward of democracy. We need to be a good citizen of our country and make our voices heard. But we also need to do more than that. We need to fund good organizations like Preborn Ministries, who is really pushing back against the darkness of abortion. So if you want to help support Preborn, go to our website, financialissues.org, and you can find a link to Preborn. You can find out about the good work that they're doing, and you can put your money where your values are.
Well said, Shana. That's good. Got a couple things here on social we can get to. Great comment from Eddie in Tennessee on the chat saying, not only do we need to thank companies for departing from DEI priorities, but we need to send thanks and kudos to FISM for their expertise, knowledge, and advice. Before I became aware of FISM, I was very cautious and fearful of the market. Now I have a lot of confidence in investing in the market with a portfolio that is up 30%. Eddie, that's great. Thank you, FISM, for your Lord-led biblical emphasis and approach. Thank you, Shana, for hosting the show, your advice, leadership. Thank you, Seth, for your coordination of the show. God bless you guys. That's awesome, Eddie. Thank you so much.
Eddie. Those words of encouragement are really helpful to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we just got this one that came in, Shana, from Janet on Facebook, is saying, nice to see you guys on Facebook. I usually use the app on Facebook today. I'm retired, 60, and I use the 55 to 65 model. I'm due to review my allocations and having a little trouble with my cash calculating my CDs. Hopefully I can get this fixed tomorrow. I'll call Pat if I need to. But do you have any advice for Shana, for Janet there, Shana?
Yeah, so I would just say use the same ticker symbol as your money market. Whatever your money market or your cash account is in your brokerage account, use that same symbol. Make sure there's no spaces, no dots, no dashes in there. The field is very sensitive to those kind of things, and it just won't populate. But if you use your money market symbol, you should be able to put in instead of shares, just the dollar amount, and that should calculate, and then you're going to code it to CDs on your tracker.
Awesome, Shana. Moving over here to Ask Shana, we got Kim, is 63, and she's wondering about the difference between a fiduciary and a financial advisor. What's the difference? Some financial advisors are held to a suitability standard, and they can recommend products to you that help them earn a commission, even if they're more expensive for you. Others go a step beyond suitability and are considered fiduciaries. How important is it to choose a fiduciary financial advisor that is bound to the fiduciary standard?
Yeah. So it really depends on the level of help that you need. And we've talked about this, recently on the show that not all financial professionals are financial advisors. So to call yourself a financial advisor, you have to have a certain license to do that. And it's the financial advisors that are held to that fiduciary standard. So, a suitability standard just means that I'm not knowingly going to recommend something for you that is not good for you. I would say more financial professionals fall under that category than under the fiduciary category. But, a fiduciary has certain responsibilities. They have to not only know their customer, they have to know the customer in depth. They have to know what their goals are, what their risk tolerance are. And they have a responsibility to put the client's interest ahead of their own. Well, that kind of sounds like a no-brainer. Most people are under the perception that every financial professional does that, but that's not the case. Some people are only licensed to sell insurance products and mutual funds. They can't sell stocks. They can't sell certain other products. So, all they really have to do is make sure that they're not going to harm you by recommending a certain thing. A lot of times they don't even have an obligation to monitor the investment that they sell you and on an ongoing basis, which is the perception for most people. They think if I buy something from a financial professional, they're going to let me know if I ever need to sell it or if I ever need to do something different with it. But that's a bad assumption to make. So you should have a really good discussion. If you're going to hire somebody, if you're going to pay somebody for financial advice, you need to make sure that they have the proper licenses to do so, that they can sell the kind of products that you're interested in. And the fiduciary standard is the higher standard to go for. A lot of times you can tell because financial advisors typically work on a fee basis. So they either charge you a certain dollar amount or a percentage of the assets that they manage. That's one kind of clue that you probably are in a fiduciary kind of relationship. If you pay commissions per transaction, then you are probably not in a fiduciary kind of relationship.
Good stuff there, Shana. Thank you for that. Might be the last one for the day here. Tim and Janice, longtime partners of ours. Thank you guys. Saying thanks for your continuing support and leadership at FISM. You're a blessing. We know it's a personal sacrifice, so thank you. Back in 2019, a friend from church told us about Dan's radio program, and we just want to say, wow, what an impact. About 60% of our retirement funds are in a rollover IRA. And we'd like your advice as to a charitable gift annuity and maybe some other questions as well. Is it possible to have you or someone who works with you give us that advice?
Yeah. This is the kind of thing that I love to do in my practice. My most favorite thing to do is charitable planning, generational planning, planned giving, and that's part of, the kind of financial advice that you can seek out and pay for from financial professionals. You also need to know what their philosophy is about those kind of things too. But that's one of my favorite things to do. I wish I was in a position to do one-on-one consultations. I'm not at this time. I haven't been able to take new clients for a while, but I do have one advisor that works with me. You can get his contact information by emailing pat@financialissues.org. She can share with you the name. You can call. You can set up an appointment. There's no obligation, just to find out, what kind of services that we offer, what kind of service you can expect, and what the cost is. If there's a quick answer, I'm happy. If you have a more specific question, if you want to send that in, I'm happy to try to answer that. But, in private practice, I am held to that fiduciary duty. So there's a lot of things that I have to know. And most of the time, these kind of questions are not quick answers. There's a lot of things to take into consideration. So I would suggest set up an appointment with Jason, find out if it's a good fit for you. If not, try to send us a more specific question. And we have some things on the horizon for partners as well, too. So don't have a lot of time to tell you about that today. But we're here to remind you every day that God owns it all. Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow to remind you that the Master's coming back. There's going to be a quiz, and we want to help you be a good steward with everything that you've been given. Come back tomorrow for more financial issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation going under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.